In today's story, as you can read by the title already, I want to tell this crazy one about me almost getting kidnapped by a creepy man when I was around 8 years old. Make sure to stick through the end if you want to know what happened. Also, if you are brand new to this channel, make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you never miss one of my uploads. But without further ado, hey everyone and welcome back to the Rutch channel, and I truly hope you are doing great today. Lately I've been thinking about my childhood quite a lot, and you know, sometimes there are crazy things happening in life when you're a kid. And at that moment, as you are really little and don't really understand how the world around you works, you often don't realize when something creepy or dangerous happens and that it's actually a bad thing. So today's story is a prime example of why I think that, because at this moment I am 24 years old, and if I would be in the same creepy situation I was in when I was 8 years old, I would immediately notice that something is off. So as a little kid, I really lived in the era of playing outside a lot. You know, in more recent times, in current times, as I got older, I noticed that a lot of kids tend to play inside instead of outside. For example, playing video games instead of playing tag. But back when I was 8 years old, if the weather was great and I went biking outside, there were always at least some children my age playing tag or hide and seek. Now, don't get me wrong, I also loved playing video games inside, and I always went to some other kids' houses to play in that case, as my mom was always pretty strict and I only got around 1 hour of computer time a day before I had to quit and do something else, so she was pretty strict with that. So because I only played on the computer for a very short period of time each day, I had yet another reason to be bored out of my mind and just to go play outside. And I lived in a pretty quiet neighborhood too. It was very safe and child friendly, and because it was on the edge of the city I lived in, if you would take a short, let's say 5-minute walk, you would go straight into some greenery with woods, a forest and a little bike lane going right through it. The problem of that bike lane is that there was pretty much no streetlights there, so when it was dark, any creep could just stand behind a tree and literally shank anyone who would walk past or bike on that little road. So technically speaking, that little forest spot was like a biking lane without any streetlights, and there also weren't any houses around that path, so there are pretty much no witnesses if someone would get kidnapped or even worse. Basically, not even someone who was an adult walked or biked on that path when it was dark, let alone an 8-year-old child like I was back then. So fast forward a little bit, one day I was going to a friend's house and he lived pretty close to that one path I just described. But the thing is, there also was a kind of an alternative route that was way longer if you would go by bike. So even if you would avoid that sketchy bike path of doom, you would still have to bike around 5 minutes longer, and I wanted to go home pretty quickly after I finished playing with that friend. So basically what happened is that I decided to pick that dangerous path so I would be home fairly quickly, because it already kind of started to get late and the sun was already starting to set. I was like, oh my god, I need to go home as soon as humanly possible, because my mom told me to come home before the sun set, and I had to bike for around 20 minutes. Now, sadly, there was another problem too. I didn't have any lights on my bike, and I heard my dad talk a lot about that people who don't have lights are often stopped by the police. And me being a little kid, I didn't really know what that meant, so I literally thought that police officers would just stop me if they saw me biking on the road and they would just put me in jail. So that really scared me as a kid. So eventually I thought to myself, oh my god, I would have to take the sketchy bike road without the lights, because if I would take the other route to my house, a police car would probably see me and instantly arrest me. At least that is what I thought as a little 8-year-old. So a little while later, after jumping on my bike, I immediately headed towards that sketchy path, and I basically had to drive on there for around 15 minutes. There was pretty much nobody on that path, not a single bike or pedestrian. And I must admit that because there is a lot of nature and a forest around there, it's really peaceful out there. And I remember enjoying my bike ride a lot because, you know, what could be better than hearing some cuckoo birds in the distance and that beautiful sunset that started to happen when I biked there. Also, no people inside at all, so I thought that I will shortly be back home without any trouble. However, unfortunately, that is not how things went. So pretty much I was almost home and there were only 2 turns left before the path would end. And right as I was biking through that first turn, all of a sudden a man appeared from behind one of the big oak trees that stood around that little turn. And I remember this man just blatantly started walking on the path and I couldn't bike past him because he took up pretty much all the space. And then all of a sudden he kind of started waving and talked, and as I was a dumb and naive child, I stopped for him because I didn't understand that people could have malicious intent, and I was really curious as a kid back then. And sadly, because I grew up in such a lovely and safe neighborhood, my parents forgot to tell me that I should never ever stop or talk, or even worse, go with a stranger. So I stopped in front of this man because, to be honest, he really made it difficult for me to avoid him, as he pretty much took up the entire path. Barely 2 bikes fit there next to each other. And then, as I remember it correctly, he started to tell me an excuse why he stopped me. And the things he said were absolutely unbelievable. But before we move on with the story, if you are still watching, make sure to comment free candy down in the comments below and I will heart that comment. It's like the secret comment of the day. But what would be even better, I myself am quite curious if you had a similar situation yourself, and let me know, I'm quite interested. Without further ado, let's continue. So this man that stopped me in the middle of the dangerous path of doom said that he was a bicycle repairman and that there was something wrong with my bike. So I, as a naive and totally oblivious as ever, thought that it was not weird at all that a random strange man I didn't even know stopped me in the middle of my bike ride in a fucking forest. I mean, if I was at least 5 years older, I already wouldn't have stopped. And also, if the same conversation happened in the middle of a literal bike repair shop, nothing would be creepy in that context. But anyways, this man starts to touch my bike. He starts to kind of pinch my bicycle tire and says that it's not good enough, and then he starts to touch the brakes and he tells me that the brakes are broken. And the most baffling thing here is, even though at that point I thought it was very weird for that man to be doing that, I still didn't think that he was some kind of predator or dangerous man that could kidnap me any moment. So at that point I remember that I started to nod in agreement with the man because I didn't want to be rude, probably. Like, oh my god, thinking about that memory now always just makes me so disappointed in myself, and also a little bit disappointed in my parents that they forgot to warn me of creepy strangers. Because before you know it, you will be thrown in some kind of basement and not so ideal things are going to start happening to you. So as this man was touching my bike, I didn't quite know what to do. Like, I definitely was weirded out by the whole situation, and I just really wanted to go home because I was afraid that my mom would punish me for coming home so late. And not even by the fact that there was a creepy guy stalling me. Like, oh my god, 8-year-old me, what are you even doing? So eventually he started to talk to me personally and more bit, like the fucking creep he is. And he started to ask me questions like, where do you live? Where are your parents? And at that moment I remembered something, because I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to lie to that man that my parents were biking right behind me and that I was just biking faster than them. So I don't have time to talk to him anymore. And after that, the man decided to stop talking to me. Looking back at it now, I was so happy that it happened. I also got extremely lucky again, because at that moment when the man decided to stop talking to me, I remember another man and woman were biking on that same path and they wanted to pass us. And I swear to God, if they didn't pass, I would probably have never the opportunity to escape that man on my bike, because only when that couple passed, the man stepped aside and I quickly got on my bike and drove away. Holy shit. I actually get chills when I think about it. It's kind of like thinking back to the moments in your life where you could have got severely injured or even died. And I also have a couple of stories of when I nearly died or got in a serious accident, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is for another video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to smash the like button, comment down below what you thought of the story. And I really wonder if you also were so naive as like an 8-year-old kid. And yeah, I really have been enjoying making these story videos for you, because I enjoy watching stories on YouTube myself. I will see you in another one of my videos. Have a blessed day and peace out.